So Naama, it's great to talk to you. Thank you so much. Why don't you just tell me a little bit about you and your background?
Okay, so I'm Israeli. I'm an international tax lawyer by profession. And for the past 8 years, I've established a subsidiary of Teva Pharmaceutical Industries in Switzerland. And I'm managing this company ever since. And so I kind of sailed away from the core legal type of international tax planning jurisdiction to more managing a business.
Tell me about Teva's annual sales, how they break up around the world, first of all. Then tell me about how is it that such an important generics manufacturer came out of Israel?
Right. So Teva started by 3 founders more than 100 years ago. One of them was a pharmacist. And the real turnaround was Eli Horowitz, which was married to one of the founders' daughter. And he was a very good businessman with a very strong vision. And he took the company, starting 2002, into a shopping spree of other pharmaceutical companies on a worldwide scale and brought Teva to a much significant value of what it was when he started his helm as a Teva president and CEO. And so today, Teva has 300 subsidiaries worldwide, a very large manufacturing footprint, over 60 manufacturing sites everywhere. Literally, we have a manufacturing site in India, in China, in the US, few, in Canada, in Europe, many, in both Eastern and Western Europe. Germany is one of our principal manufacturing sites. For many years, Teva was known for its generic business. It's a leading generic company. But it also has a specialty pillar. Most famous is the Copaxone to treat MS. And recent year, more specialty products. It's a very diverse company in the sense that the theory was that when you buy another pharmaceutical company, you just let them continue to do what they do best and you don't interrupt and you don't synergize. Whereas the most recent transaction we did back in 2016 threw us into a different landscape. And now the motto is we have to synergize and we have to bring everything under one Teva concept in order to survive the big debts that we took for this acquisition back in 2016.
If you set Copaxone aside, Naama, and if you just look at the generics business, can you explain the process by which a company like Teva or other of its competitors, like, for example, Syngenta, will analyze a product that is on patent, about to come off patent, how and when Teva would decide to get involved in the manufacturing of the generic?
So this also changed a lot during recent years. In the past, the FDA was allowing generic companies to file for paragraph 4 approvals, which granted the generic manufacturer to come into the market and have exclusivity for 6 months, right? You would look for innovative blockbusters and you will start preparing for when the product would be off the patent. You would aim to get the market in that point in time and be only you and the innovative company for 6 months period with rather high prices. This is no longer the case, putting a lot of pressure on pricing because nowadays the FDA, for understood reasons, is granting this exclusivity period at once to 4 or 5 manufacturers, thereby limiting the profit or the prices that they can come out with. And so the business model did change dramatically. Also, you have a lot of competition coming on from India and China on the simple generics because we're more sophisticated. We're moving into branded generics and biosimilars, which is the generic side of biologic products, much more complex clinical studies and much more complex production cycle. But we hope to be leading this space in the future with better margins for our products.
So that is a move from simple generics to complex generics. But
Correct.
There's one product, Copaxone, that would be equivalent to the kinds of products that wet pharma companies like Roche and Novartis and others work on. Can you tell their story? Because the story of Teva is kind of bound up with Copaxone.
To a large extent, I would say so. But it's moving away from Copaxone. So what I think is remarkable about our current CEO is that he knows how to navigate Teva, who became, I would even say, Copaxone addict. He's navigating us away from this addiction, so to speak, and building additional growth engines for the company to move forward. And he's not the first one to try and do this. We had previous management was focusing on this already from 2012, I would say. But it's hard. It's hard because it's really a blockbuster. You get used to it. It does make you spoiled in the sense that you don't really get the thing sorted at the pace it needs to be sorted or the effort that needs to be put in because you're just being spoiled. But as time progressed, we all understood, and the 2016 acquisition accelerated this need to really get ourselves in a better shape, cut the excess costs, and get on top of our game.
If you're a generic manufacturer, you're basically doing research. You're looking at existing successful compounds that are about to come off patent, and you're figuring out how to make a similar compound, a compound that has the same effect, or even manufacture the same compound. When you talk about the new CEOs, this guy, Kari Schultz, if you talk about navigating the company into a different direction, does that not involve R&D expenditure, and over and above that, very uncertain R&D expenditure, because you don't know what you'll get? Going into competition with some far larger, better resourced companies who have far larger R&D efforts going, or not? Tell me.
No, absolutely. I mean, look, picking and choosing what you're going to focus your R&D budget on is art, right? Because you want to hope that whatever decisions you make, those will be good investment decisions. You're investing into the future. So while with generic, the R&D spend is much lower and the cycle is shorter, with biosimilars, much more expensive, it's more complex, and it's taking longer time. We have very talented people who are working to identify those portfolio investments that we want to invest in. It's not in the magnitude of what you see with Novartis and Roche and those kind of companies, but we do have significant R&D budget, which we need to invest wisely. So it's not different to any other investment decision, in my view.
Who out of curiosity is making those decisions at the end of the day? Who's pricing out the project? Who's creating some kind of forecast of whether this will come to fruition or not? And at the end of the day, somebody's having to decide what the R&D budget is and where it's going to be allocated. And I'm curious how that happens, actually.
So first of all, I believe we have very talented people who are in good knowledge and deep knowledge of the market. So we have on the team, it's a multidisciplinary team that sits together to brainstorm basically in what direction are we going. And there are various aspects, and there are various theories around, are you going to be opportunistic? Are you going to deepen the areas you invest in of which you're more familiar? Are you going to focus on specific therapeutic areas, or are you opening it? Or it's very diverse. In Teva, we are focusing on pain as a therapeutic area. And we're looking, I think, now more than ever for joint ventures with companies we believe in to do things together because the success rate is supposed to be higher. There is, in this multidisciplinary team, there are people who are clinicians, marketing people, of course, finance people who does all the projections and the analysis. And I want to hope that at the table there is also one seat kept for the goddess of luck.
I'm looking at one of your recent investor relations slides, and it shows various products at preclinical, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, regulatory review. It doesn't say how much they've cost, and it doesn't say which one was decided to go to. For example, in phase 1, you have TV 44749 for schizophrenia. But it's a black box to somebody like me. I don't know what the market size is. I don't know how much money you'd have to spend to get there. You may not know yourselves, actually. This is just a slide that was prepared for some investors. But does that mean anything to you?
It does. People say that the specialty field is like a startup in high tech. Let's say 10 projects are going into phase 1. One will make it to the market, i.e. be successful for phase 3 studies and get the regulatory approvals. Now, many projects end their life at the end of clinical studies phase 1 because the heavy investment is coming through in phase 2 and phase 3, right? So most of the risk, most of the investment. In our financial analysis, you take the probability into account. So it's very detailed, basically, to see a financial analysis of the R&D project and how it's moving across its life cycle. Very interesting. Now, we were very successful in Teva in recent years to have many projects approved and make it to the market. Yeah, I think we've made the right choices. We've made the right decisions. And I can only hope that we continue in that direction.
If eyeballing it, it seems like Teva spends about $1 billion a year in R&D every year. I'm curious, who's deciding how it is spent?
It's multidisciplinary. It will be head of R&D and head of portfolio, zusammen, together. And there will be a lot of contributors to this decision-making, right? A lot of brain power goes into this decision of deciding where to put her dollars to make it a wise decision.
And how does somebody who's looking from the outside of the company, is there any way to tell? Because R&D expenditure is a kind of a leading indicator. It doesn't indicate success. It's just an input, really. And I suspect that much as we wouldn't want it in any corporation, there's quite a lot of politics in terms of who's getting the budget, which office, which scientists. And in any case, you're dealing with probabilities. How would somebody like me from the outside try and evaluate whether the money is being spent in the right place or not? Or if the returns are going to go up or down over time?
Wow, a tough question. Look, the pharma industry is not so big, right? There are those holy grails after which everybody are running or chasing or searching. And in that search, they have the low-hanging fruit, the one higher top on the tree. For example, if you go for a biosimilar for Remicade, which is a very, very strong biologic product, everybody is there. Everybody wants to make it first to having a biosimilar product for Remicade or for other blockbusters. So you look after the blockbusters and you kind of work your way background.
Forgive me, tell me what Remicade is.
It's a very strong biologic drug for treating autoimmune diseases.
Right.
It's used in cancer. For example, all those new therapies for cancer. So biologic products to treat cancer. Okay, if they're not making it out there with innovative products, they would like to be second in class with a biosimilar. You can identify the immediate suspects very easily. You just look at the numbers and what's working. And then you try to make your own version of it. You look at the market size. Okay, what's the unmet need? How many patients are out there? How severe is it? How expensive? Now, you take all sorts of consideration into that decision-making, like would payers, especially in the US, agree to pay for it? Will it be too expensive, maybe? So all sorts of considerations are going into a decision-making on what to continue developing.
So to go to something more kind of bird's eye view, so you should know when I inherited the group of stocks that the fund owns, one of them happened to be Novartis. So I tried to understand Novartis for a while and I eventually sold it. This was 20 years ago. People were saying that the big pharma companies who basically took a lot of compounds that were basically found in nature in one way or another, and they threw them at all sorts of problems to see what would stick. That was my understanding of what wet chemistry was. And there was a whole new world of biotech where you would manufacture compounds in a certain sense. You could identify molecules in a way that you couldn't do with, quote, wet chemistry. I don't know, maybe that's all completely irrelevant today.
I mean, people want to be healthy, right? And even if they're sick, they want to have kind of normal life. And what the pharma industry does is to allow sick people basically to have life quality, extend their life where relevant, where possible, and to help humanity to go on as much as possible, right? Not to feel pain or not to have insulin hikes or whatever it may be. And this will always continue because as long as there are sick people, there will be demand for pharmaceutical chemicals to treat this as much as possible.
Help me with another distinction. If I divide the health world into healthcare services, which is maybe like hospitals, and other delivery of service in one way or another, old age homes. You have drugs, which are basically some product that is delivered in the form of a pill or an injection or something. And then you have devices. Do you have any interaction with the worlds of healthcare services or healthcare devices? And
absolutely. Yeah.
Just tell me what those worlds look like.
So it's the same development that you see with irrigation systems, right? Because 100 years ago, when you wanted to water your fields, you would just pour water all over it, right? And today it became so sophisticated. There are companies who offer irrigation systems which measure the humidity level at a given plant, and they give the water just as needed. And I think this is the direction where the pharmaceutical industry is moving towards. So rather than just, spraying product all over the place, it will be much more precise. We also see a lot of therapies which are being adapted to a specific disease. It's becoming much more personalized. And so I think the devices are complementary to the drugs in the sense that they give this ability to doctors and to healthcare practitioners to be more precise with how they use the drugs or how they use the products. So rather than spray the field with water, you now are checking, okay, what's the humidity and what would work to fix this deficiency. We will have to work with devices, no question. And big data, it's going to affect the whole industry because if you recruit for a clinical trial, which is very manual process, using big data can help you really collapse the time needed to check efficiency or efficacy or safety of a product.
Yeah. So thank you, Naama. I'm going to move on to another part of this conversation. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and insights. We're in the middle of COVID-19. I understand that Teva does not do vaccines, but maybe to a layperson, can you explain what you see is going on in the industry in relation to COVID-19, either in terms of treatments or in terms of vaccines?
Yeah, so first of all, we are donating a lot of drugs basically everywhere. In the US, we've made a huge donation of anti-malaria pills, which are shown to be effective. And also yesterday, we did a large donation here in Switzerland of the same drug. And my take is that we will have vaccines at the end of the day. How deep is your pocket to develop a vaccine or not in this game? I heard that the Gates Foundation invested 20 million and called upon 12 pharma companies to participate in this search for the Holy Grail. And I see it as it's very hard on the economic, the reaction of governments and head of states, how they shut down everything. But personally, I do think it's a flu, a severe flu. And it's just that the reaction is like, whoa, I'm overwhelmed by the reaction.
You're surprised that the cure is worse than the disease?
I feel that it's somewhat stemming from panic rather than from a very thorough and disciplined and organized way of thinking. Because if you look at Japan, for example, which shows a very low rate of mortality and low rate of people overall with corona, I think they are the leaders in the world with highest percentage of old age population. Maybe 1/3 of their population is above 65 years old. And you look at the numbers and they totally don't make sense. And then you look at Italy and Spain, and you say, what's happening here? So I think the reaction, and you see very clearly how it's different to centralized governments as opposed to federations. And I think the politics is leading in large the reaction and the emotions and the politics rather than cold science type of thinking.
Yeah. Although that Japan declared a state of emergency today.
Did they?
Apparently, it's Japan and Sweden. They're trying to do light touch and we'll see if it works. I was surprised and I was sorry to see that Japan had declared a state of emergency. So I'm going to, in any case, this will unfold. I want to move on to 4 or 5 more topics, but we can treat them each a little bit shorter, which can be fun. So I feel I have an obligation as a male who's in a traditional marriage when my wife takes care of the home and I can come to the office to support, help, encourage women. You have double the responsibilities that I do. You have a very important role in the home and a very important role at work. And I just love to hear 2 or 3 thoughts from you about how you manage that maybe other women listening to this would value, and maybe insights that you have that other women haven't gotten to yet.
Thank you. So for me, it was always the case that I was going to be independent, stemming away from maybe more classic structures of where you see that the woman is taking care of the house and the kids, and then the husband is being the prime minister and the foreign minister going out there and he's the breadwinner. My whole career was being built up before I had the kids, right? I am a late bloomer mom. I had my first kid at the age of 35 and the third one when I was 40. And I strongly believe this period is really a good example of it, is that with proper planning and proper priorities, we can manage to do more than what we think we can do. If you would tell someone, okay, imagine a world where most of the business is done out of home, right? For us in Teva, most of our employees worldwide are working from home. And it's working. So we have a lot of fixations on what we can do and what we cannot do. And I'm just pushing the borders all the time and exploring new opportunities.
What is something that we men need to understand that we don't yet understand? Because there are many more women who have dual roles than men who have dual roles. What do we need to learn?
I think to connect with the softer side and to understand the roundability of things, right? So men would think in a linear manner, even though I see a lot of examples where men really think in a holistic manner. I think this is what gives women around the globe the ability to juggle between work and home because they're more holistic in the way they see things.
Thank you, Naama. I learned now from a couple of books that you've given me, and also looking from your LinkedIn page, that you know an awful lot about meditation. For those of us who know very little about meditation, standing on one leg in half a minute or 3 or 4, and addressing an audience that maybe is full of people like Guy Spear, what are the key things that somebody like me needs to know about meditation that we don't know?
I would say 2 things. One, it connects you with very deep place of wisdom that I think every human person possesses, both women and men. It's, sometimes we know things before we know them, and the meditation connects you with this place. There are other ways to connect with this place. You can go on a 50 years analysis with a psychologist, or, there are various ways to get there. But meditation for me is the quickest. And the second thing is that it connects you to the moment. If you've heard about mindfulness, I know now it's become very popular, but really, truly what it gives you is the ability to react to the moment and what it brings, rather than react from your mind or from things you've been taught. It makes you, I think, more authentic in a way.
Can you share with me and with whoever listens to this a little bit about what your meditation practice is in terms of very practical things, like when you do it, how long? Do you use any support devices? Do you have a coach?
So I start in the morning. I have my small practice in the morning. I do a little bit of yoga, meditation, really to start the day off on the right side, as I say. And then during the day, oftentimes I would find myself meditating through meetings and through phone calls, through looking outside my window, through walking. I'm not limiting it to specific timelines during the day or time slots during the day. I just do it.
So that presupposes that you understand enough about what meditation is. So I went on a 10-day Vipassana meditation course. I only lasted 2.5 days, but I learned a lot in the 2.5 days. What I understood after those 2.5 days was that meditation wasn't what I thought it was. I think the biggest benefit for me is that I now try to meditate myself to sleep every night. And as a result, my insomnia has gone way down. I sleep much better. So there's a benefit. Maybe you can just help me distinguish, because going for a walk or staring out the window, isn't that just daydreaming? What is the difference between that and meditation?
It's a good question. Thank you. So basically, you shut down your mind. You just shut down the brain. It's just like this. You stop thinking. So, we have this train of thoughts that, you run all kinds of scenarios in your mind. You're replaying all sorts of discussions in your mind. And our mind is like in constant movement. And so first thing, you have to become aware of it. And when you identify this stream or flow of river, you just need to stop it. And that moment when you stop, this is the meditation. And it could last only for a second, but it's very meaningful because you took control over something which is automatic and is uncontrolled in a way. Imagine yourself standing in the Mississippi River and you just stopped it for 1 second. That's the meditation.
Yeah, that you have to stop it without trying. Most of us think about stopping it. It's learning how to stop it without trying to stop it, without using the mind.
Yeah, with enough practice, you can get there.
What are your favorite resources, books, software, websites? Where did you learn to meditate? How would somebody like me get better or learn?
So first of all, it's my yoga teachers. I had very good yoga teachers. I was very fortunate to meet very good yoga teachers who helped me with that. And then I'm a fan of Thich Nhat Hanh, which is a monk. He operates also out of France. I find his teachings very useful. I listen to his webcasts and I read his books. Another very good resource is Eckhart Tolle. He's a German writer. He lives now in the US, I think. And he wrote The Power of Now. He also gives a lot of webcasts. His teaching is also very powerful for me.
So I'm going to thank you, Naama. And now I want to move to, we're only on number 4. There's still number 5. A couple more topics to go. Number 4, I understand that you write poetry. You're interested in poetry. And now you're really smiling. So this is obviously something that's close to your heart. Maybe you can give like a short story of the journey to that, with maybe describing some of the poets along the way.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is something that I've been writing ever since I was a child. I always had this notebook in writing poems, but I'm very shy about this, right? It's my secret place. And in recent years, I became more confident about that, both reading and liking poems and writing myself. So yeah, this is something which is unfolding. And this is why I'm smiling, because I'm kind of still a little bit embarrassed about it. What I do nowadays, specifically for Corona days, I've started up a diary, which I publish every few days, very short text, usually funny, sometimes not very funny. But I find that words is like, for me, is like a cloth, right? You can put like a whole structure out of words, create something out of words if you put them in an interesting way. And when I read a nice poem or a good poem, for me, it's describing something which otherwise cannot be described. And this is where the magic lies for me with good writing, both myself or of other writers.
So can you share one or two of your favorite poets?
Well, the first lady of poems for me is Wislawa Szymborska. She's a Polish poet, a Nobel Prize winner. And what I like about her poems is that she, with very ordinary words, manages to describe our life in a very accurate manner. Like she's using the words like a very, I would say, sophisticated camera to take fantastic photos of moments in our life. And so this is why I love each and every poem she ever wrote.
I presume that she writes in Polish.
She writes in Polish, but I don't speak Polish, even though I have some Polish ancestors. So I read her songs either in English or in Hebrew.
Does it make a difference?
I'm sure it does. Absolutely.
But you still love her poetry?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's coming across the language and the translation. There are nuances in poetry that you can only grasp when you read it in the original language, which the poet wrote.
Just out of curiosity, of all the poems in the Bible, is there one that strikes you that you care about a lot?
In the Bible?
Yeah.
Well, Psalms, I think, is the ultimate songwriting in the Bible.
And just for fun, Naama, if there was one poem or poet that you think should be included in the Bible, you know, they stopped including new books in the Bible a long time ago. It became a fixed set of texts. But if we were going to reopen that and we could propose new texts to go in there, I'll just share with you that I think that some of the poems of Yehuda Amichai should make it into the Bible. I think he is an extraordinary poet, but maybe you have better examples.
Absolutely, Yehuda Amichai is one of the best we have in Hebrew. I would actually add a Muslim into our Bible. I would add Rumi to the Bible. Yeah. I think it's also good for, bringing more peace and understanding we're all one.
That would be pretty good. That's true.
Yeah.
I was very impressed with the poem that you gave me of Hafez as well, and was proud because I lived in Iran and they were both Iranians. It's hard for somebody who's strongly Islamic to like them because they clearly liked wine a lot. both Rumi and Hafez wrote at least half of their poetry when they were quite inebriated, it seems. Naama, last set of questions for me, which is something I try and ask people in all businesses. So you haven't been prepared for this, so you'll just have to come up with what you come up with, is I want you to name up to 3 companies that you admire. So not Teva, but from the vantage point of Teva, and maybe within the industry, because it's what you know, but it doesn't have to be within the industry. Companies that you think are just doing an awesome job, that if you had only one company that you could invest in, you would invest in that company. If you could take out one of your competitors, that would be the competitor that you would take out.
Oh, wow. That's a tough one. I mean, in the industry, definitely Novartis, I think, is leading the pack. Also with a remarkable CEO, really. So, yeah, Novartis would be that one company for me.
And I'm curious, in the world of business, and ideally in your industry, but doesn't have to be, are there any CEOs, and let's just to say that you can't name Teva CEO because that's too close to home. You already mentioned the Novartis CEO. Are there any CEOs that you admire enormously that you think do an extraordinary job and have a great followership?
Yeah, I must name Cole Schultz here. No, because I think, it's not just good to have a good CEO, but you have to have a good combination between the CEO and the company. That's the magic, right? This is where the magic happens. So I think Horst Schultz is like the so right fit for Teva for its current stage. And this, I think, what makes it very remarkable.
Yeah.
Because you can find a lot of extraordinary people, really, at the CEO. But then you have to ask yourself the next question, is this the right CEO for that current stage of the company's life?
Yeah. Thank you, Naama. Thank you for taking the time. This was an interesting experiment. It will be interesting to see where this goes.